Welcome. We are back again talking about the parables of Jesus in our message series called Fables and Folk Tales. Today, we're talking about the parable of the growing plant. Now, this particular parable is only found in the Gospel of Mark. Now, we talked last time about the parable of the mustard seed, and last Sunday I talked about the parable of the four soils, and they're all found in three of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Yeah. But this one is only found in Mark, and it's sandwiched right in between.
Yeah, it's kind of between
the four soils and the mustard seed. So Jesus is on kind of an agricultural theme here, and it's found in Mark 4:26-29. I'm just going to read it quick. The kingdom of God is like a farmer who scatters seed on the ground. Night and day, while he's asleep or awake, the seed sprouts and grows, but he does not understand how it happens. The earth produces the crops on its own. First, a leaf blade pushes through, then the heads of wheat are formed, and finally the grain ripens. And as soon as the grain is ready, the farmer comes in and harvests it with a sickle, for the harvest time has come. So what can we learn from this parable?
Yeah, well, I think, I'm sure there's lots of stuff we can learn from this whole thing, but I just some of the things that I don't maybe jumps out for me in just reading and studying and contemplating. It's just the idea of what the role we play.
Yeah.
And I get the feeling that, Jesus is really trying to establish that especially with this parable, but even with the other parables kind of found alongside of it when it comes to the kingdom of God, and possibly anticipating some questions, such as how are we going to do this, or what are we to do? And I think Jesus draws attention to the farmer, which then provokes the imaginations of what this farmer would do, in the idea of he's preparing the soil, he's planting the seed, he's watering it, but he doesn't really play an active part in the actual growth cycle of the plant.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things he's doing, and there's some note to that. I think that, again, I think he's invoking that idea of like, hey, this is what he's doing. But when it comes to the growth, he went to sleep.
Yep. And stuff happened.
He did other things. He got lunch. He binge watched Wednesday or
square dancing at the bar. So in this particular parable, then, who's the farmer?
Well, I think the farmer is probably. I think it might be us.
Yeah.
Because again, it's pointing to, when it comes to the actual growth, it's pointing to this sort of unknown element going on there, and I think that really then points to God.
Right. So the kingdom of God, which or the message of the kingdom of God, as we explained in the last video, is what the seed is. And if the farmer's scattering the seed, that is now up to Jesus. Left that as our mission, to go and make disciples. So anybody who is a follower of Jesus and part of Jesus' church, then that's our responsibility. So I would agree that it's most likely in this case. And again, we're not being entirely definitive here because this is supposed to provoke thought. It is. If you have a different idea, we'd like to hear about it in the notes. But I would agree that it's likely in this case we are the farmer.
Yeah, we are that farmer. And so which leaves us also the idea of what I would say that would lead me to believe that the idea of the farmer is the idea of the unawareness of what's going on under the soil.
Yeah.
It's just from the perspective or limited perspective, or you want to say the farmer, we can't see what's happening to that plant under the soil. When the plant even appears, it seems that Jesus is presenting an inactive role. It's like, we've done something. Okay, now I've done this so that the leaves start to sprout out or anything. It's like, this is happening, whether I'm right beside it or not. The farm, he's going about his day, his business, and things like that. And I really like that Dexter Mabin kind of writes when he's talking about this particular parable. He said, although they plant the seed, talk about the farmer, and care for the growing plant, so there's a role to play there. Yeah, they could do nothing to make it grow. Yeah, and the harvest is really dependent on what God supplies.
Yeah, that's I really like that idea. We have this little thing at home called a click and grow, and it's basically so you can grow things on your shelf, and it's got a little light. And it's got a little reservoir for water, and you have these little pods, and you put the little seed, or it comes seeds already in, and you just plunk them in the little pod containers there, and they sit in the water. And it is so amazing to go every morning. You look down in there like, oh, nothing. One day it's like, oh, there's a little green shoot. And it doesn't look like much. There's, hardly anything there. And then you don't pay attention to it for a couple of days. And all of a sudden it's like it's bursting over the top and there's a little plastic cover to keep the humidity in. Sometimes they grow so quickly, it's like pushing that thing off. So you take that off. And then again, our job is basically just to water it, make sure it stays plugged in.
Yeah.
But it's quite fun to have something natural grow in your, like in this case, it's in our kitchen. And I think the whole idea there is the same. We have minimal responsibility to care for it. I'm sure a farmer has much more care. There's preparation of the soil and fertilizer, but he can't control the rain. He might control irrigation in modern farming, but in Jesus' day there wasn't that kind of same thing. So so a lot of it was dependent on factors that the farmer has no control of.
That's right. And again, I think that is some of the point, especially it's again taking us ourselves out of our modern idea of things where we kind of seem to have this thing and desire for control.
Really? Yes. I will be the first to admit I have a huge desire for control.
I will be the second to admit that me too. But I am exactly the same way.
My temperament requires me to have as much control as I can. So, and it's taken me a long time to realize that there are some things that are not under my control, and that's okay.
Well, and it makes me almost think that you can use this in I believe it's Serenity Prayer, which talks about knowing what is yours to control, what is not to control. Yeah. In a lot of ways, maybe that's what Jesus is kind of alluding to this. Hey, there's certain things that are yours. You stay in that lane. Yeah. Certain things that are not yours. You may think you're doing something helpful, but you're really you're not. You're not. Yeah.
And I think, well, we'll keep going.
Okay. And it does lend some, I don't know, similarity in the metaphor that Paul uses, which makes me think that possibly Paul had heard this parable.
I think maybe he might have once or twice.
Yeah. 1 Corinthians 3:6, he said, Paul's talking about himself. He says, I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, but God has been making it grow. Yeah. So even Paul, who you couldn't arguably probably say, I've got a few thoughts on the growth of things. I've got a bit of experience in this. Is basically kind of that idea of like, I can plant a seed, I can water it, but at the end of the day, it's God who's really bringing in the growth. And so, I think it really points down to the role we play as one of care and nurturing. But when it comes to actual growth, it's more of an inactive role.
Yeah. So what? Trying to think of how we relate that to something today. So we're the farmer. Planting the seed is the message of the kingdom of heaven. The seed growing is the message being received by another person. And what does our care and nurturing look like?
Well, I think friendship can be a lot of that. Yeah. I mean, I think just that is probably a huge side of it. Just being a person to be with whatever individuals, continuing on. I mean, like it's even I think if we take into Paul's analogy in there, like which the parable speaks of a farmer doing this, but Paul sort of he did one thing, another person did something else,
and that really reinforces the idea that it takes a community.
It takes a community,
and I really like that idea because that's something that I would have never given much credence to when I was younger. Yeah, I'm a very independent person and I like to do things on my own. And I really have grown much more as a follower of Jesus when I've let myself be part of a community where people really get to know me and I get to know them. And again, no one can explain the growth that happens. I even surprise myself sometimes.
Sure, I know. I would feel the same about myself. Actually, I kind of reminded the story. Actually, somebody reminded me maybe a month or so ago, just of an impact of something. And this is the case of a sermon, and you can have. I'm sure everyone can have stories, whether it's a conversation like this or whatever. But and just the impact of something that I spoke. Which this is a sermon that 12 years ago, and I vaguely remember it, and it helped because they told me it was on
Yeah.
Unity, but I couldn't tell you a thing I said. And I don't know if anyone else in the world, including myself, remember. But that person, for whatever reason, it really impacted them and stuff like that. And I think sometimes that's where it's sort of like, I couldn't sit there, hey, let's go back to this sermon from 12 years ago. This is how everyone's going to have, amazing growth. It's sort of like, I humbly don't remember other than it's on you. I couldn't even tell you the scriptures.
And
I think
I get it.
And it's, I know I've had conversations with people where I've received stuff like that, where it's like, I don't know if they realize they've said something that was like, wow, that was something I needed to hear, or just even presence, just nothing that they said. I think sometimes those are even the more powerful ones than anything anyone said. Is just someone's presence, that friendship, whatever in the life that is said more than any words that they have necessarily said, that has just really caused growth. And there's not necessarily I don't know that anyone can really write a book about it in simple steps.
I think that's what we like to do as the institution of the church, is we like to write books and like to create programs. And if you follow these 14-step programs, then you're going to know everything you need to know about the Bible and you will grow as a Christian. And part of some of the research we're doing now shows that works sometimes.
Yeah.
But not all the time, and not for everybody. In fact, not for most people. So that is something I think that this is alluding to, is that our part is very specific. We have to be caring and nurturing and being present for people we may have planted the seeds for, but it's really God who causes the growth.
It's really
so.
God.
What is God's role then?
Yeah, and I think that's the wonderful thing, that we're going to come back to all of these parables, especially these agricultural ones. What's God's role? To be God.
To be God.
He does, again, there's no real point. There's no really point where he says, and this is what God did. It's just sort of like, God caused the growth.
Yeah.
And
God doesn't explain himself.
No, there's no in-depth conversation or detail of the process of growth. And I'm guessing, for especially I would say us modern thinkers, and maybe it was that at this time, that causes a little bit like, I really wish he'd have said more.
Yeah.
And I think, we can, and this is just what I randomly mused on thinking about this parable, maybe there was, now that we can see the seed, now that we have more information because of our growing scientific ideas, and understand the process of the whatever happens as the seed grows and all that, and that maybe there was something hidden in what Jesus has said, like, they don't know now, but was you guys, winking a nod in the future, as you'll
understand.
You're growing of scientific understanding, you'll find the secret code of God. And it's like, that's not what he was.
No, I think we have a better understanding of what happens. Cells divide and things grow and change, but why?
Yeah,
it's. I don't think
the point is the mystery.
I could be wrong, but I think the whole point is the mystery.
It's
right?
the mystery,
yeah.
and ultimately the sovereign work of God.
Yeah,
and so I think when it comes to that, God's role, really God provides to us what is ultimately beneficial for growth in His kingdom, and it's really taking that humble spot of we may have some great ideas. And as you sort of said, like some of the stuff, like it may be helpful some of the time.
Yep.
But it needs us to, there's that compelling to go back to God and say, but you really want to.
Yeah. And I think you've hit it right on the head there. It's humility. The minute we think we've got God figured out, or we think we know the process for discipleship in 10 easy steps, I think we've crossed over into arrogance and maybe even narcissism.
Yeah, that's probably true. Not even probably. It's definitely true. Let's just nail that. But so that's our thoughts on this parable, the parable of the growing plant.
Yep.
Once again, we really, to be, I think, growing in our understanding of these parables, we encourage you not just to listen to us, but take time to read the parable or listen to it, or go on YouTube to the LUMO Project and watch their presentation of him sharing this little parable. And just before, even doing your best to, if you watch this first, doing your best to forget what we said, and just see what God is saying to you through that parable, and like you're hearing it even for the first time. And we'd love to hear your comments on that. So feel free to comment in the comment section of things that maybe you've noticed, and maybe something that we didn't even talk about on this, because something that didn't jump out for us. We'd love to hear that. We'd always want to know and grow how Jesus is talking to each one of us. So thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe so we can do more of these kind of things. That's really helpful, and have a great week.